Hello, this is Dr. Alex Avila with Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, psychologist, and speaker. Every week we talk about how to love ourselves, others, and a higher nature, how to improve our relationships, finances, career, health, and of course our happiness. And we have some great guests on the show, and today we have a really fascinating guest who is Bernadette Giacomazzo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She'll let me know. She's a multi-hyphenate, editor, writer, photographer, publicist, and artist liaison. She's been an A&R scout for Epic Records, publicist for 50 Cent, the rapper, and G Unit label, and her work has been published in People, the Los Angeles Times, and US Weekly, among others. She has been editor for Latin Trends magazine, editor for XXL magazine, and she is a co-author of Swimming with the Sharks, a real-world how-to guide to success and failure in the business of music, and a interesting series called the Uprising series of books, including the first one, The Gathering, and a new one coming up, Kings and Queens, dystopian fiction. Welcome, Bernadette, to the show.
Hello, Dr. Avila. How are you today?
Great. I'm a little tongue-tied. That's a lot of stuff you got there. It seems like now they call you a multi-hyphenate, which means you do a lot of things. Is that something that comes naturally to people, or do you think you have to develop that ability?
I think it's a little bit of both. When you come from a certain background and you come from a certain place, I'm a native of New York, yes. And specifically I grew up in New York City in the late 70s and early 80s, which meant that you had to do that at a time when coming from that area meant that you had to work hard and hustle and be prepared for anything, because at the drop of a hat, your whole world could change.
Yes.
And I think that, combined with the fact that my parents are immigrants and they had that mindset of when they came to America, they came here to work and have a better life.
Yes.
They instilled in me from the beginning that it was essential to just work as hard as you possibly could to get what it is you wanted. When I decided to go into the entertainment industry, I realized how volatile it was almost from the very beginning. And I realized very early on that in order for me to survive and eventually thrive, I would have to be willing to adapt my roles as needed and be flexible.
Now, Bernadette, are you an only child, or are you the oldest?
No, I have a younger sister. My sister's 10 years younger than me.
You're the oldest. Okay, because you're with birth order psychology. Yes. I'm an only child. And usually the onlys and the firstborn are very responsible for their age. They're extremely kind of high achievers, and they work very hard. Sounds like you're a little bit like that. And also,
I'm a lot like
You also got into Latino publishing, which is interesting. I know you're from an Italian background. How did you get it with working with Latinos in the publishing?
The thing is that, as you mentioned correctly, I am Italian. But when you grow up in New York, you're not exposed to just one type of person. You understand? It was very much a thing where, especially given where I grew up in Queens, I was around Latinos. I was around...
¿Hablo español, Bernadette?
Por supuesto, yo hablo, yo entiendo.
Wow, okay, very good.
But mostly I was around more los Dominicanos, porque los Dominicanos está en el Bronx.
Exactly.
And, so for that reason, I was around a lot of, Latinos. I was around a lot of African Americans, a lot of Asians.
Exactly.
For me, I'm used to a very diverse group of people. Yes. I could never understand a world that was all white, for lack of a better way of putting it. And so to communicate with my friends' parents and, their grandparents, it would be required to speak Spanish or at least, Latin American Spanish as opposed to...
Bernadette, you have an interesting book series. They call it dystopian fiction. I guess a future that can be bleak or very challenging. And you had one that's called The Gathering that came out. And it's about a group of freedom fighters in New York City. And there's a guy named, I think, Jamie, who's a rock kind of glam star. He fights against Roger, who's a New York emperor. And he demands obedience and then zaps people with some kind of zombie, zaps their spirit. What is all that about? What's going on with the dystopian society? And by the way, are we in a dystopian society right now? What do you think is going on currently?
I feel like we're in part of a course correction and part of like a dystopian fiction that I don't think any of us could have imagined.
Right.
I think we're seeing a huge change. Obviously, we're going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But I think that people are finally waking up to the fact that the world isn't the way it should be, and they want to take steps to make it better. That's what I think is happening right now. And I think that that's very simplistic, but that's really the best way to put it.
Okay. So there's turmoil politically, there's disease, there's economic problems. So how do we get out of this? You're a writer. Can you write us a good ending? What would be a happy ending for our current situation? If you were writing a novel for today, let's call it coronavirus, I don't know, science fiction. How would you write that ending?
Well, I tell you, without spoiling, because I've already written out my book, at least the outline of it, my book series.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, you have to. But
yes.
Without spoiling anything within the upcoming books, I think what you have to realize is that what unites us as people is greater than what divides us.
Yes.
And the more you start, sectioning yourself off into subsections, the more you start saying, well, I'm just as a for example, I'm Italian and therefore I only want to go with other Italians. I don't want to speak with Latinos. I don't want to speak with African Americans. I don't want to speak with, Asians. I don't want to understand their experience. And so the minute you start doing that, you start to isolate yourself. You start to lose the basis of love. Okay?
Yes.
And once that happens, it's a done deal. So I think the best way to get out of it is to recognize that what unites us is greater than what divides us. Mm-hmm. And the faster you unite with your fellow man, the easier you can tackle anything that comes your way.
Yeah, it's beautifully said.
That comes down to.
I like that. And of course, Love University, we talk about love as a healing force, extending loving energy without expectation, which is kind of like a conditional love. And that's not always easy for adults. We do it with children or with animals, but to have that will be powerful. Now, the other thing that I find interesting in your novel, I think you use a term called psi, P-S-I, and some kind of like, I don't know, what is it, hypnotic kind of trance or something. Now, in our today's society, some people think technology, cell phones are putting people in trances where they're so obsessed with it that they become almost like automatons, right? Almost like zombies. Other people say technology is great and it's very convenient and also gives you options. Where do you stand on that line? Is it making us zombies, or do we control it, or does it control us?
I think, I address this actually in Kings and Queens, and you'll read about how I address it when it comes out on July 15th. But I think that no tool is ever more powerful than you. My dad used to have a saying, okay?
Yes. Italiano, no? Does he speak Italiano?
Sì, sicuro in italiano.
Oh, okay.
Anche in siciliano, però.
Wow, that's pretty good.
And so what he used to say, when, as we got older, obviously, a lot of us would start experimenting with drinking, just as a for example. Yes. And he used to take the bottle of wine and he used to lay it in front of me, and he used to point to the top, and he used to say, remember something. You control this. This does not control you. Because the minute you let it control you, you'll have two problems. The problem you started with and the problem of drinking. So I think that when you take that mentality and you look at your cell phone, you realize that what you have in your hands is a tool. And it's a blank slate. Right. Okay, it is a blank slate. Whatever you want it to do for you, it will do. If you go onto this tool with the intention of starting drama and being petty on social media and stalking celebrities and gossiping, then remember, it's a computer. It only understands numbers. So when it sees that that's what you're doing in great numbers, that's what it's going to feed back to you. If, on the other hand, you go on there and you use it like I use it, you connect with people you love. You send a text, good morning, Beddu. Buongiorno, Beddu. How are you? When you do that and you go forward in love, yes, it will give that back to you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so not to spoil it, but that's really where Psi went wrong. Whereas I hint at it in the first book, and I say, well, this is Psi, and it's a psychosomatic force, and it's used to control people. Right. You'll see in the second book that that's not how it started. It started as this was something that was pure and a way for you to connect not only with your higher self and other higher beings, but with other people to find that common ground. But it's only when you start, to your point of love and how adults put conditions on it, the minute you start twisting it for your own purposes, to control people, to take away their free will, and to not give them the freedom to love you the way that they know how to love you, that's when you start running into problems.
Yeah, and also, Bernadette, one thing, it might be useful to even bring an instruction manual, psychological training before you get into the technology, because I see that a lot of even kids are playing a lot of video games, and it releases dopamine. It's kind of like a shot in the brain of pleasure, and then they kind of become hooked on it. Just like when you read your emails, you think, oh, am I going to win a trophy here? Am I going to win a prize? Is a celebrity going to call me and, want something for me? So the problem is that people get into this almost like a habit or addiction. So what can you tell people, even young people starting out, they're on their phone all the time. How do they master that instead of letting it master them?
Well, I would go back to what the rapper Joel Ortiz and I talked about in a recent interview. We were talking. Originally I had spoken to him because he was promoting his latest album, yes. And we ended up having more than a 2-hour conversation about just this. Wow. Because we're from the same age range, we're from similar backgrounds, and so we had a lot to talk about, and so it just became just a natural conversation. But yes. To get to the point, what I would suggest is what he both suggested. You have to understand that anything that you're getting from your phone or from your video game yes. is unfiltered. When we were growing up, in the late 70s and in the early 80s, everything we saw was filtered through different lenses. So as an end result, we were able to process information pieces at a time based on our age, based on our skill level, based on our psychological composition and our ability to handle the truth. Right. But now it's all unfiltered. Right. So the best way I can give to young people, knowing that we can't change the unfiltered nature of technology today, is to understand that life is like a video game. Wow. Okay? You're going to start out on the lowest level. Right. The enemies are going to be easy to defeat. You're going, it's just little mushroom dudes, and, right. You just step on them and that's the end of it. And you get coins and free lives and, invincibility stars, and everything is wonderful. But as you go on in the game, it gets more and more difficult. And the first time you're on a difficult level, you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to die. It's not going to work out well for you because you don't know what you're doing. You've never seen enemies like this before. Wait a minute, a flying fish? And you realize I'm using a Super Mario reference. Yes. What do you mean, a flying
Bernadette,
fish?
It sounds like you love video games. You must play them a lot yourself.
Yeah, I grew up on Nintendo.
A little bit.
But,
okay.
Again, I wasn't allowed to play it for 12 hours at a time. My dad and my mom set a time limit. You've got 1 hour to play your video games, and when that hour and minute came up, that my dad pulled the plug. He didn't care what I was up to.
So should parents do the same thing? Should we give I talk about technology fast, like take 4 hours or a day where you don't even
yes, 100, especially for younger kids as they're first starting out.
Yes.
It's like a drug. Okay, you're a psychologist, so you're a doctor, so you understand that the more of a drug you take, the more of a resistance you build up to.
More tolerance, yes.
Exactly. So you have to be able to limit your children's doses. Yes. They don't need to be in front of a video game 12 hours a day. They're not professional video gamers. They're not making millions of dollars playing this video game. Right. Okay. Give them an hour a day to decompress and exercise their mind in a different way, because video games will help in that regard. But if you're using video games or your cell phone as a substitute for actual parenting, then you've got a problem, my friend.
Exactly. Now, Bernadette, I know you're a publicist, so I'm going to hire you for a campaign. And the campaign is how to ruthlessly promote joy, love, and happiness in society. So can you give me like a few bullet points? What would be your main campaign bullet points to do that?
Well, I think the biggest thing that would sell it more than anything else is that love is the universal language. Yes. Okay? No matter where you come from, no matter how rich or poor, fat or thin, high or low, at the end of the day, you just, as a human being, want love. You want to give love and you want to be loved. Yes. And if you make that your basis of everything you do, from the minute you get up till the minute you go to bed, if you love what you do for work, if you love those damn kids of yours, if you love that man of yours, if you love cooking and cleaning and your puppies and your neighbor, that doesn't mean that everything has to be perfect all the time. There's going to be times that you're going to fight, but you've got to go for it in a loving way.
Correct.
Lead with love.
Now, Bernadette, let's take that and switch it around in the concept of love gone bad. Now, I know you had a program or something or a series where you talked about dating psycho, and you talk about some kind of experience you had. Now, we actually have a we call a lunatic dating series where we talk about like people with borderline personalities, narcissists, sociopath, etc. You know, the people that get involved in relationships with them and then suffer greatly. Did you have such an experience, and what did you learn from yours?
Yes. Well, just to be clear, I didn't write the whole book. A British publisher was recruiting writers, and this is back when I was in my late 20s. Right. A British publisher was recruiting writers to tell their story about dating a narcissist or, you know, dating what they was called a psycho at that point. Right. And so I submitted my story, and my story was accepted, and that's exactly what happened. And so, I
see. So briefly, what happened? Was it a very charming guy that lied to you? And
yes, he was somebody that was manipulative. He took advantage of my good nature.
Yes.
You
gave him money? Did you give him money or something, or did he, take something?
I mean, pretty much the only thing he didn't do was put his hands on me.
Oh, okay.
And I justified it by saying that, well, because he's not putting his hands on me, it's not really abuse.
Yes.
But he was stealing money from me. Wow. He was cheating on me. Oh. He got another woman pregnant.
Oh, no.
And, of course, I stayed with him. Oh, I mean, pretty much if you just check off every single box of what a guy can do that's absolutely terrible to a woman, this guy did it.
Okay, so this is what we call the so-called bad boy or bad girl fallacy, that where you pick someone that's kind of exciting but then dangerous. Now, Bernadette, we had a very famous psychologist, Harville Hendricks, on the show. I don't know if you heard about him and his wife. Well, they do something called imagotherapy, where they say that we often pick a partner that has the negative and positive traits of the parent that we had the most difficulty with, kind of like a childhood wound, and we try to resolve that. Do you think that's why you may have picked that narcissist? Did you have a childhood wound with one of your parents?
Yes.
Mom or dad?
And it wasn't, I loved my father, and I did not have any sort of wound with that. But my mother and I had and still have a very contentious relationship. And what that means is that, the traits we normally associate with our mother were just absent.
Oh, okay. So she wasn't loving or affectionate, or was she critical?
She wasn't loving and affectionate in the way that I needed.
Okay.
Let me put it like that.
I see.
Because again, you have to. I can say this now when I'm in my 40s. That I couldn't say when I was in my late 20s and early 30s when I was going through this.
Right.
People can only meet you at the level that they're able to meet you at.
Yes.
Okay. My mom did not come from a world where her mother was warm and affectionate and, let me cuddle you, sweetie. Right. My mother was raised in such a way that she was ahead of her time in a lot of ways. She was told to be independent. She was told to never expect praise. She was told to make her own money. She was told to basically have full control and be the man, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Right.
And that was what she tried to instill in both myself and my sister. Okay. And in a way, she did in both ways, because both of us are financially independent. Both of us have that drive, so that's to her credit. But where I was missing was that I felt like I had to prove myself to this guy. I had to prove that I was worthy of his love.
I see what you're saying.
And that's where the wound came in. Because
so how do you advise other women or even men to pick people with personality disorders or psychological problems and try to resolve their own issues?
You don't really set out to do that, do you?
No, it's unconscious, yes.
You know what it is? The fact is that if this guy was a monster from day one, I would have seen it. I would have run the other way. But the fact is, he wasn't a monster from day one, and that's how they get you.
He was charming in the beginning. Yeah, so you got to read the little clues.
They have to be. Yes. They have to be, or they can't get you. It's that's something that most people don't like to address, but it's something that you as a psychologist, I'm sure, understand.
Yes.
If they're not charming in the beginning, they can't get you. If they're a monster in the beginning, they can't get you.
Exactly. But you might see little clues, like maybe he gets angry at the waiter a little bit, or he he rips somebody off in a small way. Did you see little clues like that in the beginning?
No,
nothing.
not at all.
Wow. So he was perfect until some point where he took all your money.
It was perfect until I agreed to be his girlfriend, and that's when the mask fell off.
Right. So once they win you over many times, that's what happens, right? They got their prize, and now they can revert back to their nature.
Correct.
Okay.
And what I think too, the only advice that I would give, and by no means am I, saying anything than speaking from my own experience. Number one, I have to say that you cannot let that one experience taint the rest of your life once you go forward. You cannot, because you're only cheating yourself out of being in a loving relationship that you deserve.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yes.
And number two, what I would say is, anytime, always be cautious. Don't think that just because, you say, when someone says, oh, I'm your girlfriend, okay, that really was what was the turning point in that relationship. Right. But what I will say is this, what I should have done in hindsight was the minute I saw that mask drop, I shouldn't have been so hung up on the fact of, oh my God, I'm his girlfriend. Oh my God, I'm his girlfriend. That's not the prize, okay?
Right. Exactly.
The prize is somebody who values you the way you value them.
Right.
Okay? Because who you got to love first before you love anybody else is you. You got to look in the mirror and say, damn, I'm good. And you've got to believe that within yourself. You've got to realize that you yourself are the prize.
Right.
Okay? Because if you realize that you're the prize, you don't know enough to run when that happens.
Right. And also
which was exactly.
We also have what was called selective memory, where you kind of remember all the good things early in the relationship, and it kind of clouds your vision. So when he starts acting bad, you kind of like brush that aside a little bit. So we need to kind of
or you hope that he goes back to what he was when you first started seeing.
That's the thing, trying to change a person. But we know that that's very hard to do, right? Once they are already in a certain mindset and style. Now, Bernadette, the other thing that you've actually done a lot of work on is, I know you're very much into the music industry. You love music and journalism. And you co-wrote the book "Swimming with the Sharks." I guess how to make it in the music business. Is that as an artist or as a producer or just in general, the whole thing?
Both. Okay. The book originally was written more than 10 years ago by myself and author M.J. Deskovic, who I am still very good friends with to this day. This was all the way back in 2004. We were both on MySpace, and we started having conversations in our private messages about we should just write a book and tell these idiots how not to act when they're in the music industry. Right. And that's what we did. And then we fast forwarded, many years later, fast forward to today, where literally the whole world has changed, and we updated the book for the 21st century. So there's advice on contracts, there's advice on how to make it as a professional, there's advice on social media. Okay.
So let's say Bernadette, let's say I'm an artist. I ask you, Bernadette, can I just get a little Twitter and be famous? Is that going to work for me? Is that all I need?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Well, what's missing there?
What's missing there is that, especially today, the long and the short of it is that people think that fame is instantaneous, and it's not. There will be that rare roll of the dice where you do something, it goes viral, and you become a superstar overnight. Right. But
Justin Bieber was on YouTube and he became a star. Is that true?
Right, but there's for every one Justin Bieber, there are a million more that never see the light of day.
Okay.
But that was the same way in the traditional music industry prior to social media becoming a thing, and it's the same thing today. For every one Lana Turner that got discovered sitting in the pharmacy sipping on a soda at soda joint, there were a million more actresses that never saw the light of day. And for every one Justin Bieber that happened to get found on YouTube by Usher, there are a million more that never see the light of day. So you always have to put in the work. And this goes all the way back to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is the immigrant mentality of working. Come to America, make a better life for yourself, and work for it. Don't expect it to be handed to you. So that's really the long and the short of the advice, is that you got to put in the work.
Yes. You also say to put yourself out there, like, I guess, go to conferences or networking, but let's say you're kind of an introvert and shy person, and I'm actually that, and I wrote a book on shyness and introversion. So what do we do? Let's say we're a shy person. How do we go out and meet people physically, personally, if we are embarrassed to do it?
Well, I'm an introvert myself.
Oh, you are? Okay. But are you a shy introvert or non-shy introvert?
No, I'm more of I'm not shy. I'm cautious because in the right environment, I'll talk to people.
Yes.
As introverts, remember, introverts, as you know, is not necessarily about shyness.
Yeah,
Introversion is about how you process information.
Right.
And when you go into a room and you process information, if you're an introvert, you do it based on your internal dialogue.
Yes.
So the best way to do it is when you're going to a conference, you do what I do, like when I go, for example, to these days New York Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con, since I'm sort of moved away from the music industry and into the film and television industry. But the same thing applies in the music industry. If you go to the NAMM conference and you're an introvert, you walk into NAMM, you take a quick look-see around, you assess your surroundings, and you make a plan as to what you do and don't want to accomplish, who you do and don't want to talk to, and you set it out little by little, and you pace yourself, and you gauge yourself. It's really all about self-knowledge, right?
Yes.
To understand what you can and can't handle in any given conference.
Right.
And if you feel that once you're in the conference, you're overwhelmed and you're overstimulated,
Yes.
then pull away. It's okay to pull away for a little while. It's okay to take an hour for yourself and just recharge your batteries before going back in there.
Exactly.
But the bottom line is that if you're an introvert and you process information internally, it absolutely behooves you to make a plan, execute the plan, and do what you need to do.
Right. And then if you're shy, we talk about sensitivity to the environment, self-consciousness. So maybe having a comfort zone. I think you said if you get there early, you kind of get comfortable with the setting, it makes it better. Or maybe even have a friend with you to make it easier for you. Now, the other thing you talk about, Bernadette, is you talk about loyalty and also picking the right people is very important. So I'm going to give you a scenario. Let's say that you have a potential person you want to hire who has one of these qualities, loyalty, competence, or kindness. And let's say they have neither loyalty nor kindness, but they have competence. Would you hire them?
Nope.
I mean, amazing competence. They're like brilliant. You would not hire them?
Nope.
Okay. How about competence, loyalty, but not kindness? Would you hire them?
No.
Like an a-hole who's amazingly smart and successful for you?
No.
Okay. How about a kind person that's not competent, but loyal?
Yeah.
Really? They'd screw up your business and bankrupt you, but they'd be nice to you? You'd still keep them on board?
Here's the thing. They can't bankrupt my business unless I allow them to. I can train you how to be competent. Okay. But I can't train you how to be loyal, and I can't train you how to be a kind human being.
Okay.
You're either kind or you're not.
Yes.
And there's a difference between kind and nice. Okay. Nice is when you tolerate somebody and you act professionally.
Right.
But you don't, deep in your soul, you just look at that person and you say, I just wish you would die. That's someone who's nice.
Yeah, superficially
someone
nice.
Who's kind.
Yes.
Yeah, someone who's kind is somebody who goes out of their way to be empathetic and genuine to people.
I see.
Okay, so to answer your question, you can't bankrupt my business unless I allow you to. And since it's my business, nobody bankrupts me.
Right. But what I'm saying is, they can make mistakes. Let's say you have a person who's not very competent, not that intelligent, but they are very nice. Like you said, they're kind, but they don't really fit well in what you're doing. Would you still keep them on board in some other position? Try to make them fit something?
I think I would if they were open to it. I would never try to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yes.
But if they were open to working with me, just not in the way that they necessarily originally thought they would, I would be more than happy to keep them on. So if I find that everybody's good at something. So if I find, for example, that they're good at social media, but maybe not necessarily good at publicity.
Right, but aren't there these amazing, aren't there these incredibly skilled producers that are very unpleasant people, but people still work with them because they're so great at what they do? How do you look into that part of it? So
those sorts of things are transactional, okay? Because when you working with a producer for a music project and working in an actual business environment like I have, because at the end of the day, even though I'm in the entertainment industry, it's still business, okay?
Right.
When you work with a producer, it's very transactional. So The way I see it is, yeah, and I've seen it this way. You know what? Give me the beat, give me the mix,
and leave.
Be an ass on your old time, and just let me get out of here. Next, it's no big deal. You make money, I make money. I don't have to deal with you after this.
So in that case, you can't put away the desire for kindness and niceness and just do the business deal. In that case,
right? In that, you know why? Because like I said, it's not a thing where I have to deal with you long term. It's a one and done sort of thing.
That makes sense. That's a good point.
Right, but if I have to deal with you on a long-term basis, I can't deal with you if you're not kind. I just can't do it. I can't find it.
You said that some of these artists are great and some are not so great. Are you able to name names?
No.
I think you actually named one name in the thing that you said was great, and then the other one wasn't.
Well, there is. You know what? There are artists that aren't in the industry anymore that are pretty much washed up. That I name as not so great.
Okay. Well, how about 50 Cent? This guy is pretty amazing. He does that TV show.
Let me tell you something. I've got nothing but good things to say about 50.
Really?
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because, 100%. Even though, first of all, again, like I said, I'm New York, he's New York, so you have to understand that New York mentality. Right then and there, once you understand that New York mentality and coming from nothing and working your way up, you've got 95% of the battle right there when it comes to him.
Okay.
50 is somebody who appreciates a hard work ethic. 50 is somebody who doesn't tolerate laziness well. Right. And one of the things that he used to always say was that he'd rather be around people who don't know who he is but will work their butts off to prove to him that they're worth it than somebody who does know who he is.
Now, have you met with him personally? Do you work with, what do you do with him? Like, do you have lunch with the guy?
Well, no. I mean, aside from, we've had lunch because obviously I worked on his video for OJ. I'm actually in the video for OJ, but it's 50 Cent featuring Kid Kid, and the song is called OJ.
OJ Simpson or something else?
Just OJ. OJ.
Oh, okay.
And I play his parole officer. I've interviewed him for The Source.
Wow.
And as I said, did publicity for the G Unit label for many of his artists.
Wow.
And, we hung out a few times in the Hamptons with his artists.
He's a pretty good actor. I saw him on that show he does, Power. Yeah, but I heard he had a feud with some of the actors. Do you know what happened there? So with one of the actresses.
I do and I don't. I can't speak to it because I haven't been on the Power set.
Yes.
But what I will say is this. Knowing what I know about 50, there are certain things that will piss him off, and only those specific things. So it stands to reason that those actors that he had beef with did those specific things.
Oh, okay. So he's pretty honest in his evaluations, you think?
Yes. 100%. 100%. He's very blunt. Tact is not his strong suit.
Oh, I see.
But neither is it mine. So I'm in no position to judge anybody.
It's a New York style, right? You guys get to the point, huh?
Well, yeah, again, I attribute that to being a New Yorker. We don't have time to sugarcoat anything for you.
I see. What is he doing in the future? Are you working on anything he's working on? Do you know what he's...
I am not working, not quite anything in the future that I can see, but would I be open to working with him again? Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that, the way the industry is, it's cyclical, and eventually we will work together again, because everyone I've worked with before, I've worked with, time and again. Because, again, as I mentioned, that's the nature of the industry, which is another reason why I don't toss my colleagues under the bus, because the chances are extremely high that I will be working with them again.
Right.
Now, whether I choose to work with them or not remains a different story, but in terms of me being the one responsible for any sort of downfall, that's not going to happen.
What does it take for a guy, 50, come up from hard scrabble environment to be so successful? What do you think are the elements of that?
Combination of talent, hard work, and luck. That's really all it is.
So even luck too, huh?
It's all three of them. You can't just have one and not the other. You can have luck, but if you have no talent and no hard work, you're not going to stay famous for long.
Exactly.
If you have talent and hard work but no luck, you'll remain in obscurity. And if you have hard work and luck but no talent, you'll be a joke.
Yeah.
So you need all three of those things.
We know there's a psychology researcher, Wiseman, that said you can actually create your own luck through optimism. Like, you're open to new opportunities. You might talk to someone at a movie theater you don't know, and they might be a contact. So what do you think of the role of optimism and, like, being open to experience can actually change your luck? What do you think of that idea? You're always open.
I think that there's validity to that. I think you also have to remember that in the industry too, people who are really important, for lack of a better way of putting it, are not going to stand there and say, hey, I'm really important.
Right.
People who are in the industry that are important are very low key and keep to themselves.
I can imagine that, yeah.
And so it would behoove you to
be
not
nice.
only keep that optimism,
Be nice to everybody,
but
basically.
yeah, to be nice to everybody and to talk to people. And just remember that, and I tell this to people even when I first start working with them or I first start talking to them. Most people, when they see me, have no idea who I am.
Right.
None whatsoever.
Wow.
And that's by design, and I like it that way.
Okay.
Because if you don't know who I am, you're going to be yourself. And I'm going to see the real you. I'm going to see who you are as a person.
Yes.
And right then and there is when I'm going to decide whether I'm going to work with you or not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have no idea how many people were absolute jerks to me. And then when they found out who I was and what I'm connected to and what I've done, they all of a sudden started kissing my ass in Macy's window.
It's incredible.
It was the most amazing thing to watch. And I was like, you know, I can see right through you. I'm old enough and I've done this long enough that I can see right through what you're doing with this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I wrote a book, Love Types. It's actually very popular in compatibility and personality type. And one of the things I talk about is the dating masquerade, where everyone has a mask on in the beginning to impress a person. And then once you win them over, they win you over, then the masks them off. But you sound like you're kind of doing this naturally in the business sense, right? You're trying to see how people react to you in a real way. The other thing is, Bernadette, let's say I want to ask you, what is one of the biggest investments you have ever made? And it doesn't have to be money, it could be time or energy that paid off the most. What is the biggest investment you've ever made that paid off?
I can't name just one thing. I have so many things that I've invested in that have paid off.
Emotionally, and people, psychologically. Tell me one that paid off big.
All of them. I mean, there's a person who's very special to me. He's very, very dear to me. I took a gamble, and it paid off. And
you mean like a musical artist or something? Or?
Pardon? No. He's not famous. He's not a music artist. He's a writer. He's a creator.
Okay.
He's a dreamer.
Okay.
He is my greatest gift. I put it like that.
Okay, I get it. Is he like a romantic interest or just a friend?
I don't know how to answer that. I think it's both. It's both. But I think that it's a thing where, you know, both are important.
Yes.
If that makes sense. It's just as much to be my best friend.
Right.
As anything else.
Well, so as friends, first is a big issue in long-term love relationships as well. If you can have that
absolutely,
that
absolutely. You cannot be somebody's lover without being their best friend.
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. Now, Bernadette, if you could tweet one phrase to the world, what would it be and why? One phrase, especially right now with what's going on. What would you say to the world?
What unites us is greater than what divides us.
Ah, okay. Now, where does that come from? I think I've heard that. Did you make it up, or is that
at the beginning of our conversation? I say that's the main basis of my book series.
Oh, wow.
And
cool.
It's not me trying to plug the book necessarily, although it doesn't hurt. But this is a thing where this is something that I've always believed.
Yes.
What unites me and you and everybody else on this planet is far greater than what divides me and you and everything else and everybody else on this planet. Because when you realize that everybody on this planet has a motivation that's based in love and something that they love and someone that they love, you realize that they're just like you. You know, and we go back to a thing where people say, oh, you know, you can't put people in those terms. But everybody's somebody's daughter. Everybody's somebody's son. Everybody's somebody's uncle or aunt or cousin or brother or sister or father or mother. Everybody has those relationships within their lives. That, you know, their husband, their wife, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their lover, their best friend. Everybody has those relationships in their life that is something that, like me, they look at it and like when they think about it, they feel warmth and happiness in their soul, like I was just talking about. And once you realize that everybody's got something like that in their lives, you have the basis of something that you can connect on.
It's beautiful. And I forgot to mention, Bernadette, I believe you have a PhD in psychology. Am I correct?
I do.
Okay, so you're multi.
That's why I was able to talk to you on different levels.
I know. I'm really impressed. You know, you're very poetic. So we really have loved having you on the show, and you have a lot to offer here. It sounds like you have spiritual, psychological, political, and social abilities to help people. And the power of the word, I think you really love that too, which I do as well, to help people and to transform lives. Now, Bernadette, where can we hear more about you, and what do you have coming on? I know you mentioned you got the new book coming out. Tell us a little bit about your website and things like that.
Yes. If you go to my website, BernadetteGiacomazzo.com, that's TTEGIAC like cat O, M like Mary A, zebra O.com. You can find all the things that I'm working on. You can find, I write articles every day for several different websites. I work publicity for a few different artists that are up and coming.
Yes.
I have other things that are in the works that I'm not quite ready to talk about yet.
Okay.
But that I will, eventually announce in the near future. And I definitely, hope to stay in touch with you, Doctor.
Yes, that would be great.
I would love to, connect with you more in that regard.
Yeah, I'd love to, yeah. And also, did you say July 15th is Kings and Queens? Is that the new book?
Yes, that's right. July 15th is when Kings and Queens drops. It will be available on Amazon. It'll be available at Barnes & Noble.
Wow.
Hardcover and softcover available. And there are a few other things in the works of that, too, that I'm,
Fantastic.
not
So again,
about
Love
yet.
University is all about loving energy without expectation, and this has been a great opportunity to promote the causes of love, joy, and happiness in our society.
Thank
In
you.
many different ways.
Yes, and it's a beautiful thing to promote love and joy and happiness,
Exactly.
because that's really what drives us all.
Yeah. So if you want to reach us, you can reach us at loveuniversity.love, loveuniversity@gmail.com, and you can like us on Facebook at Love University Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Love_U Podcast. Subscribe to Love University with Dr. Avila at Podbean, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Until next time, Love University students, please put away your notebooks, your iPads, your iPhones. Take a little technology fast for a couple of hours and talk to your loved ones and spend time in your garden and go out there and really enjoy life. Until next time, Dr. Avila.